Okay, it's 5:02 in Germany. Hello and welcome everybody to this webinar about renaturation and sustainability measures to tackle climate change impacts on natural ecosystems. My name is Lisa Ganz and I am your presenter today. First, a few housekeeping items. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. Please write your questions in the question box of your GoToWebinar control panel. And the presentation slides are available also in the GoToWebinar control panel in the handout box. First, a little bit about me and the department I am working in. I studied biology and marine biology and have been working as an environmental planner for the past 4.5 years at WSP in Germany. I have taken up some extra responsibility in the past year as one of the Central European Task Force chairs. The CTF is one of 8 different task forces globally that exists at WSP. It's a group of early career professionals brought together to improve business performance through knowledge sharing and to work on topics strategic to the success of WSP. In Germany, we have more than 10 different offices located all over the country, as you can see on the map on the right-hand side. We are organized in different business units like project management, technical engineering, construction management, and the department I am working in environment and sustainability, which translates to the Earth and Environment Department on a global level. My office is located in northern Germany, right at the Baltic Sea in Rostock. But the members of the department are located all over the country. We at the Earth and Environment Department offer a variety of services to our clients, both on land as well as at the sea. First of all, we offer planning and approval, including offshore and onshore wind farms, underwater tunnels like the one you can see on the picture, train stations, and much more. Second, we offer green building services, including BREEAM certification, consulting on funding, etc. We also offer the assessment of contaminated sites and site remediation, as well as decommissioning and demolition. And last but not least, we also offer environment, health and safety consulting services. So today we will first cover all of the effects of climate change on birds, as well as neophytes and biodiversity loss we see on our day-to-day operations. Next, I will give a short introduction to sustainability and continue with 2 case studies, one on the degradation of peatland and the other one on renaturation of abandoned sites. And at the end, we have a section for questions. Okay, so let's start first with the effects of climate change. One way we see climate change in our projects is the effect it has on birds, especially migratory birds. One effect the climate change has is that spring is arriving earlier every year, and therefore especially short-distance migratory birds arrive earlier as they adapt to the changing conditions. But due to the unstable weather conditions this early in the year and the still missing food sources, the birds might end up in the snow, as you can see on the right-hand side, or starve to death. Also, long-distance migratory birds are faced with problems as they usually arrive later than short-distance migratory birds, as the long-distance travelers adapt slower to changing conditions. When the long-distance migratory birds arrive, all the good breeding spots are already occupied by the short-distance migratory birds or the local birds, which might result in a reduced fitness of the long-distance traveler species. One specific long-distance migratory bird is also faced with another problem, the cuckoo, a breeding parasite. When it arrives, its host birds, short-distance migratory birds, already have hatched offspring, and laying an egg in the middle of a hatched offspring is not very successful, as the host bird notices the foreign egg very fast and kicks it out of the nest. One other problem is the shifting of the breeding areas to the north due to climate change, but at the same time, the winter habitats in Africa stay at the same location. Therefore, the birds have to travel longer distances every year and also use up more energy during the travel. This also leads to reduced fitness of these species. Another effect of climate change is the spreading of neophytes and biodiversity loss. One neophyte we found during one of our projects is the giant hawkweed. On the upper picture, you can see a stem from the year before. The picture was taken in early March outside of the vegetation period. The giant hawkweed, first of all, is toxic to humans. Additionally, because of its great height, it creates a large shadow below, which leads to a reduction and a biodiversity loss in the herb layer in the surrounding area. This holds another problem, as in this case, the giant hawkweed likes to grow close to rivers, and the reduced herb layer leads to a higher threat of erosion through a less dense grassroot system. Another neophyte that suppresses the natural vegetation we found in several projects, including the two I will share later, is the white black cherry. This shrub or tree forms a dense shrub layer in the forest, making it very difficult to cut back. When it's cut back, it can grow back from any root parts that were left behind, so you have to be very careful to get all the plant parts when managing this neophyte. And because of the dense shrub layer, it also hinders other forestry work in general. Because of all the climate change issues, we need to be sustainable in our everyday life. Sustainability is defined by the United Nations as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. WSP is also committed to sustainability and has the Future Ready program to find sustainable solutions for WSP and our clients to address the challenges of today and the future. Being sustainable, WSP also aims to apply the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals within our projects. The two projects I'm about to share help to reach the goal number 15, Life on Land, especially the sub-goals 15.1, conserve and restore terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems, and 15.3, end desertification and restore degraded land. Moving on to the first case study. The first project I'm about to share is related to the degradation of peatland. It's a nature reserve located in the northeastern part of Germany. The client approached us as only 30-year-old data existed and current data were needed to establish a management plan according to the EU guidelines. We provided the client with mapping of biotopes and habitat types using GIS methods and fieldwork and made suggestions for the management plan. Peatland are terrestrial wetland ecosystems in which waterlogged conditions prevent plant material from fully decomposing. They serve as a CO2 reservoir, and if peatland degrades, it releases these carbon dioxide. Additionally, it is a unique habitat with protected species. So the nature reserve was located in a very difficult to access area in the northern part of Germany. Because it was so difficult to access, we used a combination of methods: digital mapping with orthophotos and on-site mapping of the habitats. First of all, we were provided with recent orthophotos of the area and old results from previous surveys in the area, including the presence-absence data of flora and fauna species. We analyzed the orthophotos together with the old survey results and divided the area into polygons using our GIS program. Afterwards, different habitat codes were assigned to the polygons based on the appearance of the area in the orthophotos and the old survey results. Then we selected representative locations from each habitat type that was assigned, which could be accessed in the field. We mapped these representative locations according to national guidelines and verified our results from the digital mapping or adjusted them accordingly based on our findings in the field. So on the right-hand side, you can see different screenshots from these orthophotos. You can see that different habitat types can be distinguished digitally. The upper one shows degraded raised bog with bog myrtle, the dark parts, and moor grass. In the middle one, you can see siltation areas with the common rush, bog myrtle, the dark parts, and the moor birch, the green parts. On the lower one, you can see active raised bog with bog rosemary, bog moss, common cotton grass, and sundews. So we found a high percentage of the degraded raised bog in the survey area, and the goal is to have a high percentage of the active raised bog as it provides good CO2 storage and is a protected habitat. Active raised bogs are also especially threatened by climate change and the lack of precipitation that comes with it. So one goal of this project is ultimately the restoration of the degraded raised bog into active raised bog. The report we handed to the client suggests different measures to achieve that goal. One is to close off existing drainage trenches and the creation of small ponds or level peat terraces to restore the water balance in the area. While implementing the measures, it is important to make sure that no eutrophic water is accumulated. As another threat to the active raised bog next to drainage is eutrophication. Another possible measure is the creation of buffer zones around the areas that are chosen for renaturation to limit any harmful influences from the surrounding areas. In this specific case, we have lots of different farmlands surrounding the area, and one has to avoid to introduce too many nutrients into the system from fertilization or grazing animals. So the key takeaways from case study 1 are that intact peatlands are a very important CO2 reservoir. Additionally, restoration is difficult, especially due to the droughts in the recent years we also had in Germany. Also, 30 years ago, measures were already implemented to restore the degraded peatland into active raised bog. And in our survey, we found them not to be very effective as the degradation has spread. And additionally, development of peatland, of intact peatland takes a long time, so effects are only visible after several years. As it is an important habitat not only for CO2 storage, it should be protected and the development of peatland should be supported. Lastly, orthophotos are a good tool to map sensitive and difficult to reach areas, but on-site verification is necessary. Moving on to case study number 2. Another project, it took place in northwestern Germany on old military sites. Our client is providing these sites as a compensation measure for street projects for renaturation. These sites have been out of use for decades and are therefore repopulated with flora and fauna already. As the renaturation might at first destroy the wildlife at these sites, a possible conflict with Federal Nature Conservation Act, especially with the possible presence of protected species, arises. Therefore, bats, breeding birds, lizards, bugs, and biotopes were investigated. We offered the following services to the client: the species mapping of different flora and fauna. We used the app Fast Field for the field service for the first time in this project. It is a very useful little app which helped us a lot during the field work. In this app, you can assign a specific protocol tailored to your needs, and the app creates, next to an Excel file, PDF or Word documents of the entries, which then can be sent out as survey reports with little to no post-processing time. In the project, we also assessed the impacts of deconstruction on the existing wildlife and proposed measures to minimize this impact. We also provided consulting services to ensure this deconstruction of the site is in accordance with national nature laws. Our findings in this project show that, in fact, the area has been repopulated with protected species. One building, for example, is used as a summer habitat by different bat species, which are all protected under the national law. We also found several breeding birds occupying the buildings or the surrounding areas, like the black redstart, the Eurasian blue tit, the barn swallow, which is threatened in the area. Additionally, protected species like the plant dwarf everlast, the sand lizard, or the insect blue-winged grasshopper were found in medium abundances all over the site. You can see some lizards here on a tree part, which we found in the area. So the idea is to provide a better and more extensive habitat for all the species after the deconstruction renaturation. But in order not to come into conflict with the law, special measures have to be taken during the deconstruction of the buildings and ruins at the old military site. It is also not an option to leave the site as it is, as there are potential harmful substances like asbestos in the ruins, and the site is partially contaminated with old explosives, and vandalism is also a problem there. So for deconstruction, we suggested the following measures. First of all, an ecological construction supervision. Second of all, preservation of the building that is populated by bats and improving the building to be an ideal habitat for bats. Additionally, parts of the deconstruction should take place outside of the breeding season. And the deconstruction and renaturation itself must be done very carefully, and the vehicles are only allowed to drive along predefined routes. Additionally, holes that are created during the deconstruction must be filled with similar soil or ideally soil from the same site to protect the flora and make sure any lost species can repopulate the destroyed area after the deconstruction is finished. There is an area on the site where the ruins are already heavily overgrown, and we suggested to leave these ruins in the ground if this aligns with the other issues like the contamination. So the next steps in this project will be to get the final approval from the client and the nature authorities. Additionally, a detailed deconstruction timetable will be developed together with the deconstruction company. WSP will also be involved in the deconstruction as ecological construction supervision to make sure the goal renaturation of the sites to provide an improved and more extensive habitat for present and protected species is reached in accordance with all necessary measures on the law. So as one key takeaway, I would like to say that this project shows very well that it's best to demolish buildings soon after the end of use or reuse it, otherwise the nature takes it back. Abandoned buildings form a new unique habitat. You can see a barn swallow nest in an abandoned building on the upper right side. Deconstruction of these buildings might even harm the wildlife. One technical takeaway is the app we used for our field service. It saved us a lot of time in the field as well as in the post-processing, and therefore minimizes data handling times. So as a summary, you can see that climate change manifests in many of our projects, and as a consequence, sustainability should be part of every project we are involved in. Potential measures to counteract climate change sometimes seem small, but can still have a strong impact, like the small nature reserve in northern Germany that can act as a CO2 reservoir if managed in a good way. And sustainable buildings and renaturation will become ever more important, and it holds interesting market opportunities for the future. So thank you for your participation in this webinar. Let's start with the questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Fantastic presentation. I will just mention quickly the housekeeping items. The presentation slides are available to download in the handout box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And also you can continue to log your questions in the question box on the same control panel. I will start with the first question. What is the biggest threat to peatlands areas in your opinion?
So one threat is definitely the droughts, as peatlands are fed by only precipitation. Intact peatlands are only fed by precipitation, and as the raining is even less with climate change, that's one big problem, as well as the eutrophication from the air.
Thank you. The next question is renaturation. About renaturation, what would you say is the biggest hurdle to renaturation?
Well, one is, as we see in the case study 2, to make sure that the renaturation does not negatively impact the existing wildlife at the site. And another one is to make sure that all the stakeholders are on the same page about the renaturation. So sometimes there are, for example, economical interests that not necessarily align with the interests of the nature. In case study 2, for example, we've seen quite a use of the area as for motorbike activities, and they will not like the renaturation, as the use of the site as a motorbike area will be restricted afterwards.
Thanks. Would you recommend the usage of orthophotos for mapping habitats?
Yes and no. So as a single tool, it's not effective as a picture is only so good. But if you combine it with the on-site verification, it is a very good addition, especially for areas that are difficult to access or very sensitive like the peatlands. So you should not step into the peatlands. Yeah.
The next question is about case study number 2. Do you expect many issues during the ecological site supervision during the reconstructions of case study 2?
So it's hard to say. We've seen some species that might cause issues. So if there's a nest found in one of the buildings that is about to be deconstructed, we have to put a stop to the deconstruction. And yes, so it's hard to say. It really depends on how much birds occupy the area in the end. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a potential for using surplus clean urban stormwater for restoring peat bogs?
Well, as clean urban stormwater might have a lot of nutrients still in it, even though it's cleaned. It's better not to use this as peatlands are per definition a very nutrient diminished area. So you should not introduce too many nutrients into the area.
Thanks. What is the expected usage of the old military sites after renaturation?
There's no specific use anticipated, so it will be just left to nature, become a normal forest or grassland in the end, and given back to the nature. Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned an app during your presentation. Could you share your opinion about the pros and cons, any limitation using the app in your work?
Yes, so the Fast Field app is very, very useful. It's very easy to handle on your mobile devices. So we just used our mobile phones with it, no specific tablet or anything. You can design the forms for your data entry tailored to your needs. So you don't have, there are not many restrictions. You have drop-down menus and everything. One limitation I would say is that you only can take point measures, so that you can't record any areas, but you can, for example, put one point in your area, for example, for biotope, and then later in GIS translate this to the area. So you can still use this for biotope mapping, for example.
Thank you. Have your department investigated the impact on natural habitats external to Germany?
We have been involved in habitat projects in Denmark and in the Netherlands, where we also did some biotope mapping, but at sea, so not at land. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, there are more questions coming. Will the nature qualities in the restored areas be monitored after the restoration?
Yes. So that's part of compensation measures. You have to usually have to make sure that your compensation measures are effective, and so there's a follow-up survey after restoration is done.
Fantastic. No more additional questions. So looks like we're at the end of our webinar. Thank you for all your questions that you submitted today. If you have any additional questions, please follow up directly with Lisa via the contact details shown on the screen. Thank you, Lisa, for a fantastic presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.